All right, he's here. Mark, welcome.
My
I
apologies.
encourage everyone to do speaker view just so you can see Mark. So right before Mark starts again, I just want to express my gratitude to Mark, specifically to National Equity Project, for giving us the gift of time. Mark is an incredible human, and I do not want to take any more of his minutes away from you, so I'm going to let him go. Thank you, Mark, for being here. I'm going to make you a co-host.
Right on. Top of the morning, y'all. All right. My apologies for a little bit of delay. I was hanging out with a couple of your other beautiful colleagues, and I'm a brother and get a little emotional, so it was hard for me to say bye to everybody. So hey, thanks for waiting, and I got to take a breath. I got to start my timer. One of my traditions right now, just for a minute, I have just been having to put 8 minutes and 46 seconds on my timer, just as a reminder what that feels like. That was, and no, by no means I can know what that feels like to have a knee on my neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. But when that timer goes off, I might take a breath. So my name is Mark Salinas, and I feel blessed to work with the National Equity Project. My colleague, Sarah Gray, will also she's out there in the hundreds of y'all. She might be chatting some things. She's joining, but I'll be hosting like 20 to 25 minutes of some time with y'all. I first got to say just a word about myself. I am greeting you from downtown Oakland, just on the other side of the Webster Tube, good people. Our office is down right on Broadway and like 19th. I was born and raised in San Francisco, went to all San Francisco unified schools, San Francisco State. I was an ethnic studies major and became a teacher. I went to New Orleans for a while and taught middle school, and I taught some middle school in San Rafael, and then I ended up teaching high school in Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco. And this organization hired me 17 years ago to actually work with teachers, leaders, and folks around this notion of equity. And so here I am 17 years later, still loving what I do and loving to be with folks like yourself. Alameda, I see you. I got to say a word about me in this moment too, so you can give some grace around how I might be showing up a little passionate, a little angry, a little grieving, a little confused, but also a little excited. All those things are wrapped in right now because we're in a moment. And I'm heavy. I got two boys. I got a 16 and 18-year-old. I also have 50 plus years of living in my skin. That things that are happening right now are activating and triggering for me, but they always are every day. But definitely, it's hard because just I don't know, 2-3 months ago, moved into a new place not too far from here, and had 4 police officers, pull me out of my car in the driveway and ask me did I live there because there was a black guy walking around with a flashlight. And I live on a block there's really not that many street lights, and everybody uses flashlights at night when they're walking their dogs and taking their trash out. So that was a trip. And so I knew I was seconds away if I actually said, had a little attitude, like how that could have went down. And so I got countless numbers of experiences like that too. Not as many lately because I'm a little older and grayer, and maybe I'm not as threatening. But it's a moment, and I'm tired of having a knee on my neck. So I just got to keep it real with y'all. And I want to open with some of those things too. And as again, I'm here deeply humble and excited to be here, but I'm grieving and I'm angry. And I see you because I've had a chance to hang out with Sarah, Claudia Medina, who also works in your district. Had an opportunity to hang out with about 60 of your folks this year for 2-day institute we did, and just saw nothing but agency, care, deep passion, and a commitment. So I'm here like just straight up excited to be with y'all. So I'm not here to teach you anything, but I'm offering some things for you to try on and consider. So with that, I want to put this quote into the room, that things are not getting worse, they're getting uncovered, and we must hold each other tight and continue pulling back the veil. Adrienne Marie Brown offers us that. She's got an awesome book out that's called Emergent Strategy. But she does all kinds of stuff and talks on all kinds of topics. But I want to see some faces. This is an illustration, and I want this beginning piece to actually continue to bring the humanity back into our work by actually inviting you to unmute at this time and say the name
Ahmad Aubrey.
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 Ahmad Aubrey.
Aubrey.
Ahmad Aubrey.
Aubrey.
Ahmad Aubrey.
Floyd.
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 I was unmuted.
Check this out, y'all. I see you. Down the corner from you, huh? Right? It's not probably just today. Folks have been raising and trying to raise in some places. But I came across this in the patch. I was like, all right, Alameda, I see you, right? I don't know who's going. And it's not about you going or not, because all kinds of ways for people to say how they feeling. But I see you. Or name.
Brianna Taylor.
Taylor.
Say Breonna Taylor.
Happy birthday.
Birthday, Breonna Taylor.
Taylor, happy birthday.
Brianna.
Birthday, Breonna.
27th birthday.
So, I like you to now mute. Consider keeping Brianna alive right now, because some folks are not talking about that, because there's so much unfolding all the time. But Attorney General Daniel Cameron might want to hear from you to say what's the latest, right? We heard some folks busted into her house and put 8 bullets in her. Yeah, I'll stop right there. Mm-hmm. So we're back to being muted. I think I'm the co-host, so maybe I can mute everyone just in case. All right, mute all. And I want to just invite you to take in a few deep breaths. You don't have to say these names out loud, but you can read them and say them in your mind. I just want to give you 30 seconds to take a couple deep breaths. All right, take a look left, take a look right, move around a little bit. If it's something that catches your eye, a plant, a loved one, something you got some gratitude for this moment, look at it and say, I love that painting. That's my favorite plant. That's my beautiful daughter. Out there in my backyard is my beautiful dog. All right, and I'll bring you back to the screen. And keep breathing, good people. I'd be remiss if I didn't say I came across this recently, maybe 2 days ago. So I want to lift it up that if you just Googled, say, their names in Chicago Public Schools, they do have a resource that could help with some, and there's tons of resources out there, social media. I know you're sharing them with each other. So, but I do want to put some things in people's hands, because you are teachers. And guess what? You are neighbors. And guess what? You are parents. And guess what? You are siblings. And so these tools are adaptable to all the conversations that are being had right now. And so check it out and check out all the other stuff. And there's no one right way, but sometimes we'll breathe. That's 8 minutes, 46 seconds. Sometimes little tools and structures can be our friend. And what we always say at the National Equity Project, there's tools and you are the best tool. So when you decide to start some conversations, when you decide to listen, when you decide to say you're confused, but you're gonna learn some stuff, when you make some mistakes and know there's gonna be some pitfalls along the way, you stay deeply humble and you stay in it. We all figuring some stuff out right now, including myself. So I wanted to pass along that resource. Hey, word about us. Word about us. Been around 20 plus years, based downtown Oakland, but we got a couple offices in other other states. Look at me. I got a bold vision. And we partner with folks like yourself that are around trying to create liberated and thriving and belonging environments, whether that's in a classroom, whether that's in a school, whether or not we're working with a granting organizations trying to figure out how to responsibly give resources to folks that are doing certain types of work. And oftentimes it's the personal internal work that people have to do before then deciding who do I give money to. So it's both and. So we're not here to teach you about equity, but we're gonna offer some of our learnings and some provocations today if y'all wanna stay and play with me for a little bit. So in how I show up, it will be a little anger, a little bit passion, a little bit of grief, a little bit of confusion, a whole lot of excitement and opportunity. And I say that excitement and opportunity because I believe in people. I believe that solutions, that we as an organization believe that solutions to these problems reside right in those communities. And all of my interactions with everyone I've ever met out in your system, and it hasn't been a whole lot, but everyone I've met, y'all know how to listen to each other, at least the places and spaces I've been in, and see each other and humanity in each other. And I'm sure someone will say, well, not all the time. Of course, we not like, right? I'm not, making that up, but I have to say authentically that my interactions with many of your folks have showed that to me. And so this is where I think this is the time for y'all to lean in and not let your equity commitment slip, and not let the discourse be around, well, we can't do that because we don't have the resources, right? That can't be the mindset now. First say, what is at play? What are we learning? And what's ours to do? So I want to offer a little bit of a flow. We're going to give you a minute to acknowledge some equity work you've been doing. Yes, you have been doing some, and I'll say a word about that, and it's going to show up in the chat. Offer just a couple words around this notion of equity as some language to try on, not to subscribe to, but this is what we offer in terms of when we're with folks, some language we offer people to be thinking about stances and how you might be approaching it or having mindsets around it. And the last two is like, what have you been learning and paying attention to over the last couple of weeks as there's been this these double pandemics, right? One, COVID-19, that just came on the scene and said, whoa, and say, hey, globe, you're gonna shut it down for a minute. And you learn some stuff about inequities and stuff that's playing out, either that you're aware of or not. We're gonna lift that up. And I would say we're talking about an anti-Black racism pandemic as well. And that just didn't show up recently, although it's got people talking about, how is this historic? So take that in, try that on for a minute as we just engage for, about 10 minutes, yeah? And I'm not gonna talk at you the whole time, but I am gonna share a few things in a moment before we start chatting. Oh, the chat is the next. So we're gonna chat. Let's get down for a minute and light up the chat board. And I wanna say a word about this chat. No matter how you define equity, you've been doing something, trying to do something, trying to influence something that's about all. That's about justice. That's about, if you use the word equity or not, it's around access. It's about seeing kids. Some of the things you've been doing maybe have been about, I've been raising questions about why are we doing this? Because we would say that's equity leadership. You put some new tools, some new structure in place for your young people to actually talk to and listen to each other. You just said, well, that was just about building relationships. Well, that, maybe that was some equity work because it was about the humanity in our interconnected faiths. You may have not thought that was equity work. So anyways, let me pause for a minute, give you 60 seconds to put some things in the chat around what you've been doing, what you've been trying to influence, either in your classroom, with your grade level, in a department, committee. Let's see what you got. What you proud of, Alameda? All right, here we go. We got some zooming with each child, some new literature, giving food out to students. I see you, Alameda. Mm-hmm. See some things around the arts. Ooh, discussing racism. How about that? When is that going to be one of our core standards? Listening to my students. Thank you, Kimberly. I always like to say with that too, listen to and believe your students. Listen and believe when they tell you. They're telling you what's going on. It's hard to hear sometimes. I was a teacher. Oh my gosh. Miss Salinas, blah, 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 and stuff like that. But the minute I started accepting that that was their perception, I had to own that and not feel guilty and not always just say, well, I'm here showing up every day. You just gonna have to figure it out. Even times I believe in that, but I knew that I needed to go right to my students and hear them. This will be with your families too, and it ain't easy. All right, I'm gonna pause you there, take another 10 seconds. Beautiful thing about this is now you're seeing different ways in which people are talking about what equity work could look like. Because I'm gonna share, again, a little bit of language around that. There's a ton of jargon around equity, and you need to have those conversations. What do you mean by equity? What does it look like in your classroom? What does it look like at our school, in our district? It's all the above. And when it's all said and done, you gotta answer for yourselves. This is what it looks like, sounds like, it feels like in my classroom or in our conversations, right? And it's aspirational in the beginning because it takes a minute to get there when you to systematize it. But at first, it's got to be around naming it and claiming it and saying this is what it looks like. I appreciate you. You can keep chatting, but I'm gonna keep moving a few slides on. I see you, Alameda. Took my son to the Oakland. All right. All right. So I'll get caught up in the chat. I'm gonna pause and keep a few things going, y'all. So a notion around equity lens and commitment during this moment. Arundhati Roy offers us this quote. So as we metaphorically see a little x-ray, even more of stuff that some will say, well, I've been seeing that stuff all along. But as more have been seeing these things and things are even more amplified in an x-ray, this is where a good doctor would say, okay, here is some of the stuff we're learning. Now let's talk about what we need to do to move forward. And it's not going to be just a pill and a quick fix, but it has to be about owning what we're starting to see in our x-ray and getting more people to own that. And that ain't going to be easy, but I'm sure some more things got lifted up as things came to a pause. I want to share just a couple notions around this this word equity, not to get you to subscribe to it, but anyone ever working with us have always heard us say, you know, when we partner and we get in with you and roll up our sleeves, at least our stances, our questions, this is where we're operating from. And you ain't got to have these, but we want to be transparent. And again, this I'm just trying to model for you. You have to, in your head, what does it mean to you? Not just access to my kids. You have, it is that and some more stuff. And what does it look like in your classroom and with your colleagues? So we would say, if you give me, a minute to say this, and this word equity might not even be around 20 years from now. So some of y'all, and I know you got some folks been at it for a minute in Alameda. This word equity wasn't around 25 years ago, 30 years ago. It was something else, and it probably will shift. But some of the stuff that's in this language ain't changed, which is around understanding how predictability shows up in our places and spaces, and it gets correlated along racial lines, class, and other factors, patterns. So part of it is around understanding how there's predictability happening and what's ours to name it and actually try and understand the root causes of that. We would say it's about discovering and cultivating gifts and talents that every human possesses. So instead of just having deficit centered spreadsheets on young people, what do the assets, funds of knowledge, Google Docs look like, right? That they come to us, and adults and parents come to us with amazing gifts, amazing solutions, amazing contributions to how do we tap into that? And that working toward equity means we got to interrupt some stuff. It's not about just interrupting people and putting people on blast, but it's around, there's been things that are allowed to exist that actually are not working for folks? And actually, how do we put a pause to stick a fork in that or put a gear in that for a minute to pause and to say, who is that not working for? And we have to also pause to say that our unexamined and unconscious biases are driving a lot of our decisions and what we see in our conversations. And we all have to pause and think about how that's showing up in our dialogue. Got to interrupt some stuff. And it's about creating some inclusive and thriving environments where conditions are there for folks to really, truly feel like they belong. And again, I share those to say, important as an educator to continue to be clear, not to just be down for equity, but what does it mean to teach for equity? What does it mean to lead for equity in practice and doing it as me, right? Meaning, don't do it as Mark, do it as Andrew, right? Do it as Jessica. What does it look like for you in your classroom? And you keep asking yourself that. And the other thing I wanted to just bring up, and I was glad that at the state level, more language, and I know some of y'all probably saw this video, Tony Thurman offered a little bit of platform for folks to continue to think about how that shows up in our field. How about that? I want to get a little chat in, and we'll be done in 3 minutes, but I want to get another chat in, and this is important because it's setting up what's ours to do. So first, before we design stuff, we got to say and continue to say, what are we noticing? And so if we go back to the x-ray, more things may have been amplified in Alameda for some of us around how the assumptions we made around how close grocery stores are to folks who live over there in that apartment complex or whatever the issue may be. So I want you to chat a few things that you've learned, that you've noticed, or you've been seeing this all along, but maybe we haven't been always talking about this. Take 60 seconds and drop a few things around what you've been noticing and what you've been learning about groups of folks in Alameda, and try to hold and refrain from any blame or judgment. This is what I'm seeing, especially over the last couple months. It's beautiful, y'all. And don't get me wrong while saying beautiful, like I like what you have here. Beautiful in that you are paying attention to the stuff that matters. And you live in a town, in a city where I would actually say this is your responsibility to think about what's within your sphere of influence. Meaning, what does it look like for us to own some of this as a school and as an institution? What does it look like for us to partner with our community even more to say, this stuff is so interconnected to how young people are showing up. So you can still influence stuff by being in the conversations, but you got to be able to continue to bring forward. Here's what you notice what happens, right? For our young folks around particular things. And it ain't gonna be solved overnight, but here's our opportunity. This is where my excitement lies, in that especially towns like yours, that may feel like a big town, but I do think it is a kind of a small town. I ain't lived out there, but my interactions out there does feel like it's got a little hometown feel. You can actually start really talking about some of the opportunity gap issues that are unique to Alameda. And again, ain't gonna change by August, but this is our opportunity to shift the conversation, starting with what we're noticing. Don't get overwhelmed by all of what you've seen, but just how do we first name it? All right, I'm gonna pause that chat and be done in 2 minutes. And again, because this is now archived and we have this in many ways, these are some of the equity challenges. These are the opportunity gap things that for years to come, you could put forward and say, we need to dig into this because this is going to be impacting what we do going forward. So in closing, I want to offer a framework and it's just an intro. So don't feel you have to get it right now. And this will be a follow-up resource around that. But there's an organization called Transcend that's been cranking out some really insightful resources. And I just want to flag one of them that is around these 3 R's, around responding, recovering, and reinventing, or as we would call redesigning, and the opportunities we have. And so bear with me for 2 minutes to just introduce you to it and just kind of put it in, a little bonnet for a minute to be thinking, like, how are these things going on simultaneously? So on the responding end, take a look at some of this. And if you feel that you've been doing some of that, I bet you nod and say, yep. Now, come on, teachers. I know you've been in, like, we innovate all the time, every day. And now this hit, then we upped our innovation game and we crowdsourced and we actually learn from each other, et cetera, and so on. We just that's kind of like how we roll. And now our level of innovation has to now take into consideration the innovation and you don't have a hot spot. So what does that mean? Or here's the innovation and you don't, right? And all that kind of stuff. And there's no childcare. So then we got to innovate and differentiate. There's going to be some new language around differentiation with innovation in times of complexity. Somebody gonna coin that expression, but that's what you have been doing and will continue to do. And the recovery piece looks a little like this. Again, they go along simultaneous. Put your eyes on that. And this last question in there is kind of like the blue and red pill from the Matrix, maybe. It's around some choices that you have as classroom teachers in your classroom with your grade levels, departments, and units and schools around what you're going to start to prioritize over time around what can be. So there lies the opportunity. And so I was dibbling and dabbling in your website just to see what are you putting out to folks. Now, you weren't calling it responding recovery, but here's a few things, a couple screenshots of some stuff I saw on your website. You're like, yep, that's what some of the responding recovery looks like. And you've been also doing some of that and got hot links and been setting up stuff on your Google Classroom for parents and other folks that's been in that responding recovery. So I see you, and that'll be we have to be thinking, how are we actually, again, using common language, say, we have to continue to respond to this and we got to recover from that. It helps us have common language around what we're making decisions and how we're strategically planning. And lastly, this reinventing. This is where I get super excited. Because those furthest from opportunity, as the X-ray has been shining, you learn some more stuff. And then part of your work has to be around reinventing, redesigning how you're partnering with parents and families. You have to continue to think about the discourse you're having. Is it going to lead to status quo? Or will it lift up some things we've been assuming that actually maybe is not serving all of our students well? And this last point around this design kind of mindset and stance around ideating, prototyping, reimagining, as you still got to put something in place for August, right? It's both and. And I'm going to show you a graphic to and this will be the last thing I show you. This comes out of Transcend. On the top half, what's possible? And you see you got 3 colors there for doing all 3 at the same time. So you got to be reinventing right now, which I'm sure you are, and you're still responding and recovering to stuff. And the bottom one will show that if you're not reinventing along the way, you're going to reproduce what you had in the past in a blended fashion. And of course, that's not to say what you've been doing isn't been amazing and work. So you bring all that forward through this portal. But the things that actually were some gaps from the way you did things before will still show up if you do it in a blended way, unless you actually start to say, we have to also be mindful of those gaps and how we're tending to that and pilot and try some stuff and be okay with some things that are going to fail. So Alameda, I see you. I appreciate you. Those that didn't get a chance to say bye to your 5th graders, didn't get a chance to hug those kindergartners and say, you going on that yard now, and I'm saying this metaphorically and symbolically, I know that we are still grieving from some of the goodbyes we didn't get a chance to do. We tried to do it on Zoom. Maybe some families, you saw them drive by, did a little parade and waved at your classes and a couple things like that. But I want to name and know you continue to take the time to grieve, not getting the chance to say goodbye to your lovely, beautiful children that you serve and will continue to serve. And we're going to be all right because you got each other. I believe in you. You are enough. And just know NEP is rooting for y'all, and we'll stay connected.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
So
Mark.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much for your time. Thank you all as well for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deep appreciation.
Much love, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Powerful, powerful. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm looking forward to seeing you on Tuesday with Susan Andrian, our last keynote. Thank you, Mark.